thanks again for coming. This is the second of our 3 total intentional communication sessions that we've had at this conference. We had a delightful start to our day, learning from Andy Goodman about how to tell stories this morning. And then later in the afternoon, as part of the closing plenary, we'll sort of wrap it all together and talk a little bit about what we might bring back to our own work in terms of communicating all that we do and all that we know. And we're happy to have guests with us this afternoon who are going to help us out. So to begin with, let me say that our first speaker, Kristen Brady, is unable to join us today. She came ill this morning. She is a new communications consultant in Vermont who has nice experience out west in the conservation sector. So if you have a chance to get to know her or engage her in our work, please reach out. We were very lucky to have our friend Ethan Tapper say, "I'll help," and he jumped right in and said, "I can do some talk about communications." So we'll have Ethan come up. I'm going to tell you a little bit about him if you don't already know him. And we're going to put the glasses on. There we go. As the Chittenden County Forester for the Vermont Department of Forest, Parks, and Recreation, Ethan Tapper advises private landowners, municipalities, conservation organizations, foresters, and loggers on the responsible stewardship of forest land. He administers Vermont's Use Value Appraisal, or Current Use Program, in Chittenden County, and manages over 4,500 acres of community forests. He writes a monthly column for community newspapers and a quarterly column in Northern Woodlands magazine. He maintains a YouTube channel and leads dozens of public events attended by thousands of people each year. Among other awards and distinctions, Ethan was the Northeast Midwest State Foresters Alliance's Forester of the Year in 2021. And just recently in 2024, he was named the American Tree Farm System's National Tree Farm Inspector of the Year. Please welcome Ethan Tapper to the podium.
Hey, I feel nervous in front of you guys. So I'm going to talking about forestry. So I've done a lot of this. I don't have any formal communications consulting. All of my work and all of the communication that I've done is just by trying to be scrappy and trying to figure out techniques that work to communicate our work well. And just by trying stuff and failing and trying different stuff. And central to my belief, or central to my communication strategies, are my belief that most people already agree with the stuff that we do and with our values. We manage for all of this different stuff that has universal appeal, right? We manage for biodiversity and ecological integrity. We manage for climate resilience and carbon. We manage for wildlife. We manage for local renewable resources and strong local communities. We just haven't done a good job in every case at communicating that to people in a way that they understand, in a way that's impactful and resonant for them. So we're starting from a good place, right? Because we're already the good guys. And we're already doing incredibly impactful work. It's just about then getting people who don't yet understand our work to understand it better. So there's a couple different things. I should say this is an hour-long talk. I'm going to rip through it in 20, a hot 20. So I do want to talk about, if we get a chance, how do we talk about forestry? And then, of course, there's like the physical delivery tools, of how we talk about forestry. So about the message, and then about the tools that we use to deliver the message. This is really, really important. Sometimes this slide, I've called it playing offense versus playing defense. I don't love the combative nature of those analogies, so let's call it celebrating our work versus defending our work. We are in the position frequently, right, of saying that, encountering opposition to work that we did. We didn't do any work, in advance of a forest management project or something like that to communicate the value of the work that we're gonna do. And so then we end up on our back foot, and people they have critiques of the work that we do, maybe they don't understand it, and that's our fault, because we didn't explain it to them well, or we didn't explain it to them in a way that they understand, right? So instead of saying our work is okay, or that our work is acceptable, or that our work should be allowed, we should be talking about, in advance of the project, how our work is beautiful, and how it's profound, and celebrating it, wanting to get people involved, rather than just being like, we don't want to get in trouble. We want to do like the bare minimum of outreach so that we can say that we did something about it. What we should be doing instead is being so much more proactive. And we need to acknowledge that the work that we do, we all get it, right? We go out into a managed forest and we can see that this work, this change that's happened in the forest, the trees that we've cut down maybe, that has a lot of value, that we can manage forests in a lot of different ways for a lot of different cool things. But we need to acknowledge that most people don't have the tools to understand the work that we do. And the idea that, to a layperson, the idea that cutting a tree could not be part of caring for a forest is completely reasonable, right? It's totally counterintuitive to everybody. We know that that's an incomplete understanding of the work that we do, but we need to give people the tools to have that understanding as well. So I want to talk about a case study, where actually this is the place where we were going to go on the walk tomorrow. Instead, we're going to go to the Heinsberg Town Forest, which is another great case study, but to talk about this project that I did at the Catamount Community Forest in Williston. So Williston is a much more developed community in Chittenden County. Most people would know it as like a relatively suburban community. I had been having some success with outreach on town forest projects, and I really wanted to see how far I could take this thing. So I was like, okay, so been having some success at the Heinsberg Town Forest, communicating forest management. So what would happen if I did forest management and tried to do a big outreach project around it on the most used section of the most used town forest in the county? So went into this area, relatively small area, 25-acre area that has 6 miles of trails, which is I would argue, completely irresponsible trail density. We're dropping trees across 3 parallel trails that wouldn't intersect. It was craziness. And we had really developed, like handicap accessible, graveled, double track trails throughout the entire area. And this area receives tens of thousands of trail users a month. So like, we can do all the forest management that we want, and we can talk about it all we want, but if we're not actually like exposing it to people, what does it matter, really? Like, they're not gonna get it. So my goal is to do the opposite of like they call it the green veil that they do out west or whatever. I want this like in people's face as much as possible, and then I'm just gonna explain the hell out of it. So the first thing that I did, it's really important that we acknowledge that people do not like to be surprised. And if people feel like they're surprised, there's a whole lot of negative feelings that come with that. So I try to start early. I marked all the trees to be harvested a year in advance of the start of the project. On these trails, I created informational signage that explains what these markings are, and created something called a self-guided tour. So a self-guided tour is, you can scan a QR code, you download the Avenza Maps app for free, scan another QR code, you download a georeferenced PDF map. That PDF map takes you to the location of 8 different interpretive signs around the harvest area that highlight different aspects of the project. I just did this on laminated 11 by 17 paper. Throughout all of the forest management projects that I do is this idea of making, not just like, again, we're not doing a symbolic amount of outreach. We want everybody to engage with this project, regardless of how they consume information, and ideally to actually have heard about this project and the rationale behind it in multiple different places. So I sort of think about it as making ourselves unavoidable, making it so that if you live in this community, there's no way that you couldn't have heard about this project, using a variety of different strategies. So it's good because you get at people wherever they're at, but then it's also good because you're messaging that this project is not something that we're ashamed of. This project is something that we're proud of, and we want you to check it out. And so I just do a variety of different ways of sharing information about the project. So in-person walks are really important. 2-hour walks on a weekend can be very impactful. I have found that Saturdays from 1 to 3 p.m. is the time. I had this moment at a different project at the Heinsberg Town Forest where we were doing these walks. We were calling them forest management walks. Come see an active forest management project. Come see an active logging job. And you get 10 or 12 people. And the next one, you get the same 10 or 12 people. And then me and my friend Andrew, who's a wildlife biologist with the Vermont Department of Fish and Wildlife, we were like, I don't know, we'll do a wildlife walk. Same walk, but we called it a wildlife walk, and there was a wildlife biologist there. 40 people. So then we started to say, how can we incorporate like a little more of a hook into each of these different projects that we do? Because we know that we're managing forests. At the same time we're doing forest management, we're also managing forests for birds, we're managing forests for biodiversity, we're managing forests for carbon and climate change, we're managing forests for all these other things that people that might think that they're not interested in forest management are interested in. So it's about like, how do we like flip that switch in someone's brain that says, I'm gonna show up for this thing? And how do we frame it? You know, maybe someone's like, yeah, forest management, don't care. Oh, wildlife, I like that, right? And I maintain that if you can get someone to show up for something, even if they're mad, is better than them just sitting at home and thinking whatever they think. Because as we know, when people don't have a good understanding, or when people don't know about the work that we do, they're almost always wrong. And those wrong feelings are often harmful to the work that we do. So I do work at this Catamount Community Forest Project. We did mountain bike. That's me on a mountain bike with my Forester vest on. Mountain bike walks. We did a lot of stuff with birds. It's a birding hotspot, actually became an Audubon endorsed forester. Shout out to Audubon Forester endorsement for this project, essentially, because the birding was like such a cool and impactful angle on the work that we were doing. I've also noticed that in addition to framing walks in different ways, it can be very impactful to engage different partnerships. So someone who might not think that they are a constituent of the Vermont Department of Forest, Parks, and Recreation or the Chittenden County Forester might be very strongly related to Audubon Vermont. You know, they might be on their mailing list. They might really trust them and really support them. And so when I do an event with Audubon Vermont, that lends us credibility because they understand, you know, oh, I didn't realize that forest management could be good for this other thing that I value. So engaging these partnerships for us, the traditional partners were like Vermont Woodlands Association, Vermont Coverts, Audubon Vermont, the Vermont Land Trust, the University of Vermont. And then I started exploring some non-traditional partnerships. So I was like, you know, again, everybody believes in forest management, they just don't know it yet. I went to the co-op in Burlington and they did all these cooking classes and I was like, geez, maybe they'd like to do a tour of an active timber sale. And they were like, sure. You know, they believe in local renewable resources. And it was about sort of pitching it to them in the right way. My favorite one that I did, and I started exploring some of these other partnerships and just trying to get other organizations that we wouldn't think of traditionally as part of our like coalition, but they actually are, turns out, to come in. So I started doing walks as part of this Pride Hike series with Vermont Pride Center and Outright Vermont, which are LGBTQ advocacy organizations. I was like, hey, you want to go take a walk on an active timber sale in the wintertime? And they were like, sure, sounds great. I do 2 a year with them now. They had never been asked. So I think that this is another thing, like when we develop these partnerships, we don't even really know what our coalition really is because we haven't thought super critically and creatively about the people we can mobilize and the organizations that are already aligned with the work that we do. Or they're aligned, but they don't know it yet. I've gotten into videos. Someone else is going to talk about videos here in a second. Again, thinking about different people consume information in different ways. So a person who might attend a 2-hour in-person walk in the wintertime might not be the same person who will watch a YouTube video, but vice versa might also be true. So someone might not be interested in going on that walk, but they will watch a video. So I started putting up these YouTube videos. Most of my videos, longer form, are 3 to 5 minutes. Shorter form are less than 1 minute. They take 15 minutes to create. And then to also highlight partnerships, I started doing videos with other partners. So that's me with folks from Vermont Land Trust, with Vermont Department of Fish and Wildlife, with Audubon Vermont, while this project was active. And I also did an Instagram takeover of Vermont Department of Forest, Parks, and Recreation's Instagram channel, where for a week, every day of the week, we did a collaborative post. So that's where two channels post the same thing at the same time. We did a collaborative post every day. So what that's messaging, right, is that, again, that partnership, that we're in this coalition, that we are not just the ones who are deciding to do all this crazy, complicated stuff. 3 minutes? Cool. this really complicated stuff that actually we are a community of these different organizations with different values, and we've arrived at these incredibly nuanced actions that we're going to take together. And that's incredibly powerful. Created something called a link tree, where people can click on a single link and get everything at once. By the way, all this stuff is free. Virtual events can be very powerful because people who can't attend an in-person event can attend them, and also you can put them on your YouTube channel and people can watch them forever, even if they weren't there. Did some cultural events. This is actually for the Heinsberg Town Forest, but history nights, storytelling nights, got 100 people to show up and spread the word of the forest management. And then the last two things that I'll say is recognizing that also, again, even after we're gone, so with a lot of these projects, I did like dozens of public events attended by hundreds of people, but then we leave, the project's over. And so what tools are we gonna give people to understand in an ongoing way the work that we did? So for every project that I do, I create an ArcGIS story map that tells the story of the project itself and the outreach that we did around it, and embeds all these different links so people can understand it, and it's beautiful, and create permanent interpretive signage. All of these things are also, I should say, are templates that I can send to all of you and that you can use, and they're all free. And so you don't even have to start over. So the results, I'll just say for this case study, I know I'm out of time. For this one project, 22 events attended by 564 people, created 33 videos, watched 11,000 times, created 8 permanent interpretive signs and a self-guided tour that guides you to each one of those signs, a story map, 4 articles in local newspapers. We're on television a couple times. We're on Vermont Public Radio and National Public Radio. We were featured in this really cool documentary about Vermont forest products. We received 2 negative comments, which is craziness. But I think all of this is just a testament to what's possible if you really just spend the time to really do the communication work we want to do. And none of that is talking about all of the, so that's 2 negative comments is like all of the negative things we avoided, but we also created so many positive things, right? We created so much more understanding. We created so many different perceptions of this work that we do. Thanks.
Yes, yeah. Thanks, Ethan. So Ethan can't stay with us for the whole session, so we'll take questions for Ethan now. Questions for Ethan? You can stand and yell.
Maintenance creep meaning like the ongoing time suck? The only things that I feel like really I've thought about taking maintenance would be the physical signage. Most of these town forests have like, volunteer groups that I sort of like hand that work off to. But most of this stuff, that sounds like so much time and energy, but this is a very small part of my job. Like this is probably less than 10% of my work that I normally do. All of these things, once you get them established, actually don't take that much time. It doesn't take, like I've got that sign template and I just alter it a little bit for each project, and then bang, you got a new sign. Story map, same thing. Other signage, same thing. YouTube videos, once you figure out how to do it, it doesn't take any time at all. I haven't felt like it's like the more I do, the more time it takes to then maintain the thing that much. Yeah.
JP?
And so in my work, I've been given a tremendous gift, which is that for the most part, we've spent some time to like vet how we want to talk about specific things, but then have been given a lot of license to like craft the message. Because I think that would also be something that would, more than anything, like would take more time, would be having to, if everything I do had to be vetted substantially, right, it would take a lot more time. But you do have to get clear about the message because you don't want to have someone, a member of obviously a state organization that's like saying something that's totally antithetical to the other values of the organization.
Ethan, if we go back to your results slide, how many months of work was that?
The actual project was 1 month, but I did...
Meaning the harvest?
Meaning when the machinery was there working was 1 month. But I was, working on it for a year, but just in a very low level until that summer.
More questions? Way in the back, stand and yell, please.
Yeah. No, I don't feel like we had that necessarily. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, especially at the beginning of this process, and a lot of this is like a trust building process, really. Like people want to be able to trust me with these things that I'm telling them to do that, again, are like super counterintuitive and scary and at times jarring. The cutting of a tree, the changing of the way that a forest looks. And I think a lot of people came with a healthy amount of skepticism. But the fact that they came, was what allowed us to build that trust. But no, I don't think we started from a place of default trust necessarily at all.
Quick question, Ethan. Before getting the project planned and doing all this outreach, was there any other engagement with the decision making? Is there like a committee that you had
Yeah.
that informed you, or vice versa, or did you make all the decisions?
No, so what we did is I wrote a forest management plan for the parcel, and then that passed through a town forest committee and then to the select board. So then that was sort of the tacit approval, and then, we had to pass logging contracts through the town select board and things like that. That's a whole nother thing I didn't have time to talk about here today, but I think, so for town forest management plans, I just wrote a town forest management plan, and I made the town forest management plan itself, the whole thing is an ArcGIS story map, which I think that there's a lot of opportunity to use that forest management plan as the first touch point to engage people. But if it's a 40-page, really dense technical document, I think that that's a barrier. So trying to also make that a learning experience. But yeah, I wrote the management plan, said that we were going to do this, and then we implemented.
Okay. One more question? Anybody? Very good.
Can I just say one fact that's one of my favorite stories ever? Is that, so this is the difference that, having a really active presence, where I had a person that was coming to my events, but was also an opponent or a detractor of the Camel's Hump Long Range Management Plan, which we just talked about in this room this morning. And they were like, why don't you have them on the state land do this really cool ecological forestry that you're doing on these town forests? And I was like, they are. And so sometimes, again, and I think this is true for all of us, we're all doing this incredibly impactful and important work. It's just how do we share that work that we're doing in a way that's going to resonate with people, and that's going to turn them from maybe detractors into supporters. Thanks.
Thanks again to Ethan for stepping in with his good story work. All right, next we're going to hear from our fellow forester, Wendy Weisiger. And she's going to teach us about story maps. So Wendy is the managing forester for the Society for the Protection of New Hampshire Forests, based in Concord, New Hampshire, where she oversees the forest management of 65,000 acres across 200 properties in New Hampshire. She is a New Hampshire licensed forester, has been active in SAF, serving as the website administrator for NESAF since 2014. Please welcome Wendy.
Well, I guess somebody had to follow up Ethan. I wish I could have made him stay and talk about story maps. Sorry, I have to change the view here so I can see my notes. So in today's world, the ability to effectively communicate what we do to a broad audience is critically important. Whether you're presenting to the general public, stakeholders, or regulators, capturing their attention and conveying a clear message that elevates their understanding of our work is essential. And today I'm going to talk about how you can use story maps to help you do that. I think it's hard to follow Ethan up, man. He does a great job. So what are story maps? And I'm sure, just by show of hands, how many folks in here have read a story map or interacted with one? Oh, wow, okay. And how many people here have made a story map? Great. Correct me if I'm wrong, but feel free to tell me if I'm doing something wrong here, but it's good to see a good amount of you have actually done this, so it's not totally new to everybody. So what are story maps? They are the ArcGIS web-based mapping, communications, and GIS platform. What that means is that they allow you to go beyond static presentations like this PowerPoint, and they combine interactive mapping that you can create in desktop, ArcPro, and ArcGIS Online with multimedia content like photos, videos, and audio, with text to tell compelling stories. And we all know we have a lot of compelling stories, as Ethan just said, even if people don't know it yet. So the benefits of working with story maps are that they're particularly effective at communicating like spatial information and data, stuff that we work with every day to a broad audience. Like, for example, they can show through interactive mapping, like the distribution of a forest pest over time and space. And people resonate with maps, right? So it's a really great tool to get people to understand a little bit more about what we do. And they can enhance your communications and outreach about your forestry and habitat projects. And one thing people may not realize that they do is, even if you don't want to use mapping at all, or if you don't want to have a map, you can still use story maps. They're actually a great way to enhance the view of just a website. So if you have information on your website and you want it to look and move in a certain way that's a little bit more capturing to your audience, you can use them for that as well. Let me see if I can, sorry, I'm used to a touch screen, so this is getting, am I moving forward here? Sorry. Nope. Oh, there's a clicker, imagine that, thanks. Okay. Sorry, I was too short to see it. It's still not working. Let's see. Hold on. Yeah, that's what I'm working on here. Okay. It's probably not turned on, but okay, so sorry about that. So key features of story maps. Obviously, the biggest thing is that they have interactive maps. So you can see on the slide right here is, you know, a picture of a timber harvest and a description with like an arrow. This is the PowerPoint version of using an interactive map. All they can do is have an arrow that points to it. Interactive maps allow users to navigate through, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later when I show an example. And then they integrate they have multimedia integration. So these story maps pull in audio and video, and you can move that audio and video around with your map and scroll in and out of it. They also have text blocks that help do a really good job of just like pointing out those brief, important messages that you need to say about your work. So the great thing about story maps is that they're accessible for anyone to build. They have a variety of templates for us to use as launching points, and you don't need to be proficient with GIS to use them. You don't have to have ArcGIS skills. You do not need to know how to build a website. You don't need to know how to code. Anyone can do this. You can use your organization's pre-built maps. So you might have someone in your organization or company who's a communications person. They don't need to know mapping. They can use your maps and build this. And also, ESRI has a module called Express Maps, where you can, if you have no ability to build the maps on your own or know how to do that, you can use their Express Maps feature to make a map for yourself. So getting started. In order to be an author, you have to have an ArcGIS Online account. That's either comes with your subscription if you have desktop or ArcGIS Online or Pro already. But if you don't, you can get a free public account. You just have to sign up, and with that account, you have access to story maps. You'll have more features if you have a paid account, like anything, but you'll still be able to build them. And when you log in, you'll see this screen in front of you, and the wonderful thing about ESRI, what they do a really good job with, is they give excellent tutorials, right? So when you log in, you'll look at the bottom left-hand side of the screen, and you want to click on the Getting Started if you want to learn how to do this. And this is what's great. They have all of these tutorials that cover the basics of getting started. They run through a suite of like how to build a compelling story map, and they even have a whole module on like how to create and use express maps. So everything's in there. And the other amazing thing about this is that they have all these really cool examples. There's a story map online community, and you can look at story maps that other people have made that are published of all different topics, and you can search for different topics. So there's a great story map in there about the spread of zebra mussels. There's another interesting story map about spotted lanternfly. It's pretty fun to just like scroll around and see what other people are doing and what the possibilities of this are. ESRI also provides templates that you can use. As Ethan was saying, I don't know whether he could make what he does into a template, but you can use their templates, and then they have a bunch of canned maps that you can start with as well. So I do have some pro tips if you're going to delve into building story maps. One is like know before you go. What you want to do is know what story you want to talk about, develop an outline, pull all your photos and video and text boxes together before you start building it, just so that you can avoid what I call story map creep. Because once you get into this, you'll see all the different neat things you can do, and it just starts to like explode. So you want to make sure that you have a good outline, and you can, that way you can actually get your project done. Keep your text brief and very clear. And then you want to use like captivating visuals and relatable content. We have some great drone video that we like to put in our story maps, and that really does a great job of showing people what the whole forest big picture looks like, and then drilling down into what our forestry project looks like after that. And the other thing that I'd like to mention, ESRI had this program, ArcView Story Maps, has responsive design. Most of you probably know what that means, but it just means that they're designed to adjust to the size of the screen that the viewer is looking at. So if you're looking at it on a phone or a tablet or a desktop, it will adjust how the project interacts with itself, with each other, and how it scrolls through. So you just want to view that before you publish it anywhere. You can embed these in a website, so make sure that you just check that, and then you can publish it. So I wanted to have a chance to show you a couple of examples of the way that some of us have used story maps. So it worked great. I am used to using a touch screen. So I'm going to apologize again about scrolling. So see if I can scroll without going too fast here and making you all car sick. Oh no. Sorry.
I think we have to reduplicate.
Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. Sorry, everyone.
Sorry about that. So this is a project that we put together. I work for the Forest Society. We are a nonprofit. We're a forestry organization, and we do a lot of forestry projects on our properties. So when we do that, we have, like Ethan does, we have timber tours, and we have, books on sticks, and we put a sign up at every harvest in advance of that harvest that's on a public road somewhere that says, timber harvest about to occur, with a little bit of information, and we ask people to go to our website if they want more information. Well, we wanted to make sure we had information on our website. So we created this story map that's just a quick snapshot. It's like a paragraph or two about the forestry project, and some photos of it once we get it up, and a map, and it relates to a map. So we start with some background about our work, and then we have this map that shows with a pin everywhere in New Hampshire that we've been doing projects recently. So if someone is curious about a project that might be happening near them, they can look for that. Or if they've seen something, they can also look for that. On the left-hand side of the screen, they're in like order of when we've done the work. But there's two ways you can interact with this. You can either click on the project specifically, and it zooms in automatically. It shows where the harvest area is at the pin, tells a little bit about the project, and then you can scroll through and look at photos of it. It also brings in video. I'm guessing this is a video that's having a hard time loading. Internet might have been a little bit faster here, so I'll skip past that. But that's how this side works. You can also continue to scroll down the screen, and as we get to the next project, it will zoom into where that project is, talk a little bit more about that project, and show you some photos of it. You can also zoom out on the actual map. Oh, video, it's working. Everyone loves watching machines, right? That's why we do this work. Yep. So I'll let that. But I mean, this is a really great way to capture people's attention, right? Everybody laughed as soon as everyone made a sound when that video came on, and that's how the general public, I think, also responds. It's interesting. You can also, sorry, I'm going to move away from the video. You can zoom out if you just want to look into an area and click anywhere there's a pin, and that's where there's a story. So this is just one example of a story map and how we use it to interact with, how we use it to talk about our work, right? I wanted to show you another one as well, so let me see if I can get back to my PowerPoint. Oh my goodness, here we go. So this is not a story map that I built. This is made by the Forest Health Program, Bill Davidson over there. They send out a newsletter to foresters and natural resource professionals, right? So this story map is really aimed at foresters and natural resource professionals, and it just talks about the work they do. Vermont does a similar thing. They send out a newsletter and update to everybody about what's going on, and they wanted to try story maps, so I didn't ask them. I told them I was going to use it as an example. The neat thing about this is across the top here, they have like quick links to get down into the map about something you might be interested in, biocontrols, trapping surveys. They talk a little bit about their mission and what they do, and then they get into the story map, and they start with this really neat interactive map. And this is how you know it's aimed at foresters. You can like click on the map. Let's see if it works. Internet's a little slow here. Sorry. And it just gives the like geodatabase information about like what that aerial survey took up. This is gypsy moth, and it's in 2017, and it gives you like the geodatabase information about it. So that's just a really neat way of them updating their maps. They talk about their air patrol, civil air patrol, and then you can scroll through and look at their other work that they do, aerial surveys and maps and things like that. I have 3 minutes. I can wrap this up very quickly. So again, I'm scrolling sideways. I'm looking at different things with these. They do a great job of using these text boxes to just give a quick, here's what's going on here, right? So I think that's most of what I wanted to talk about with these maps over this story map. So this is something that anyone, it's viewable to the public and anyone can look at. I think it's aimed a little bit more at foresters, so because of some of the data that they have in here. Like this one gets to be pretty technical. I'm not even sure what everything in here is. But they've really done a neat job of pulling together all of their work into a really great visual with some explanation. Their internet's a little bit slow, sorry, so it's not really picking up everything. But that's just one, these are just a couple of examples of how story maps work. There's a lot more that I could get into, but it would probably take me too much time to scroll around more. Happy to answer questions about it later as well.
Thanks, Wendy, and we are going to hold questions till the rest of our panelists are done now, so thank you very much. So, next up, So next up, we get to talk about videos. So our guest today is Lincoln Fish. I think you met him on yesterday morning's panel. Lincoln is a consulting forester in Massachusetts. He's worked for Bay State Forestry in Athol, Mass. since 1981. He holds a Master of Environmental Management degree from Duke University School of Forestry. He is a proud founding member of the Hilltown Land Trust in Ashfield, Massachusetts, and evidently he enjoys making videos to communicate our work in forestry. Please welcome Lincoln Fish.
Okay, technical tools, clicker. The good news is that anybody who went to Andy Goodman's talk this morning can go back to their rooms now. Because I don't know how he got a hold of my slide talk before, because I was holding it pretty close to my vest, but somehow I guess I let my guard down. Because everything that I was going to say, he already said. Okay, all right. So 2 years ago, a little more than 2 years ago, I did a video of a harvest that I was involved with. And the goal was really fairly simple, just to present something about forestry and harvesting in a positive light. And in this process of making that video, I learned a whole lot about communicating and about videos, especially mostly from Tom Adams of Real Life Productions, who did the videography and the editing for this and both of my videos, actually. And so I've tried to distill what I learned in that process for this talk today. So here's the reason we made the video. This picture is from 2007. And at that time, we did a harvest on some Hilltown Land Trust property in Western Mass. We cut some hemlock. The hemlock got sawn into some timbers that were earmarked for a timber frame contractor who was putting up the entryway, the timber frame entryway for the new store that the River Valley Market, a grocery store co-op in Northampton, was building. This is their first store in Northampton, and these are the enthusiastic volunteers raising that timber frame structure. And oh, good feelings abounded on that day and for many weeks after. And I thought, oh good, we have made some new friends for forestry. 5 or 10 years later, nobody in either organization could remember this day, and certainly nobody remembered where those timbers came from. So in 2019, we had organized another timber sale on Hilltown Land Trust property, the same property actually. And we read in the newspaper that River Valley Market is doing well and they're expanding and are building a new store in East Hampton. So I didn't want to miss our second chance to tell the story. So we inserted ourselves in that story and donated some timbers for the store and started making a video about it. The most important thing I've learned from Tom Adams is that science and facts are really of secondary importance. And this is difficult. This is a difficult lesson to learn for somebody who's kind of prone to standing up on stumps and making speeches like that guy there. But when we turn ourselves into expert talking heads and quote scientific studies, we separate ourselves from the audience. even when we are scientifically and logically correct, we can sound unexciting at best and at worst kind of defensive. So if we're trying to win the hearts and minds of the public, perhaps we're using the wrong tool for the job, and we run the risk of becoming irrelevant. Rather, oops, how did we get here? Oh, all right, I just skipped one. Emotions are really more appropriate. When speaking with the non-forestry public, cutting trees and management is, for most people, an emotionally based issue rather than a scientific or logically based issue. Oh, I see, I'm hitting the other button. Okay. A well-told story is going to do this communication job much better because it addresses the emotional needs of the audience. Science and facts can certainly be a part, but should not be all of it. And I think the story should be less about showing that we are right and more about showing that we and our target audience are similar and that our interests overlap. Oh, okay. And that brings us to what I call the us's and them's. Whenever I watch a video, one of the first things my brain does is ask, is this about us or is it about them? And if it's about them, it's easy to turn off. And it's kind of hard to make my ears listen to what the thems are saying. And I think that's pretty much true of everybody, no matter if you identify with the us's or them's, whoever they are. Of course, the labels are reversed if you identify with the them's, in which case the them's become the us's. We lose a chance to reach people with our message if we're identified as a them. So it's time to change the conversation. Like I said, I think the message needs to be less about why the talking heads are right and more about how we are all similar. My favorite part of the video that I made with real life is where you've been watching my backside walking through the woods, accompanied by my voice talking in flowery language about stewardship and some things like that. And you're just settling into 5 minutes of either nodding and agreement and starting to nod off, or you're disagreeing and about to turn off. And then we want to incorporate as many elements of today's forest into the future forest as possible. When we heard that the River Valley Co-op was making a new building, we volunteered to supply some timber for their outdoor eating area. These oak timbers that have framed this outdoor eating area and the front of the building were harvested right up the road, harvested locally as part of a timber harvest that we did on Hilltown Land Trust property. So at this point, the viewer has to wonder a few things, like, why would a them have pulsating Latin music in their video? And an us is using wood products from a timber harvest, and it's for a purpose that we us's like, and a them is donating wood. I thought thems were all about profit. Us's and thems are cooperating, and this is confusing. And so I think that's really the key to it. An emotionally successful video is going to blur the differences between the us's and the thems. Not that we tell anybody that we're blurring those differences or tell them that we're alike, but rather show them. And I think this is the second important point that I learned from Tom Adams. Doing and showing are definitely much more effective than telling. So we should always look for ways to tell the story through action rather than talking. Another favorite video moment is showing the joy of releasing oak regeneration. We can throw charts and graphs at people all day long, relate info about how forests respond to thinning, and they'll probably retain almost none of it. Hopefully, after watching this video, they'll keep with them a good feeling about young foresters walking through the woods, making the sun shine above oak saplings. Those guys would come out with saws and go and pick out places where there's a promising young oak sapling and just clear a little cylinder of air around them so that they have some light straight up to shoot for. This work is kind of like looking for buried treasure and gardening at the same time. You find an oak sapling, you uncover it, give it some sunlight, and then you can return in 5 or 10 years and see what it has done with that sunlight. Okay, so action. Another thing I learned from Tom, he always tries to include a message of hope, that things really are getting better, and especially that the people in the video are working to make that happen. So, okay, here's another. We're sponsoring a work day on Friday of this week where we're going out and putting seedling protection tubes around the oak seedlings that have come in our harvest area to protect those seedlings from browsing by deer and moose so that they'll make it into the next generation of trees. So again, blurring those differences. Oh, I got ahead of myself here. Blurring those differences, we have us's and them's working together, installing seedling tubes to protect the oak seedlings and make the world better. Working on a project together, sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between the us's and the them's. Okay. And then finally, viewers get to see what a good guy Larry Lashway is. To non-forestry viewers, he has a big loader and a sawmill, so he's obviously a them. But now we've established that the lives of some us's have been made better by what Larry does. And we get, in the video, we get to see the community spirit that Larry operates with. And maybe he's partly an us. If that's true, we're making progress. And so these are the QR codes that go with the 2 videos that I made with real life and Tom Adams. And there's also some keywords up there. If you don't do QR codes, you can Google those. I encourage you to watch them because, hey, I need the views.
Thank you, Lincoln. We have one more speaker on this session this afternoon. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Kelsey Seeker, who works at the Northern Forest Center with me. And I left my glasses on the table, so here goes. Kelsey joined the center in 2022 to elevate marketing strategies for several center programs that grow markets for Northern Forest products and services and attract new residents to the region. With almost a decade of experience in content strategy and brand storytelling, She works with the center program staff to promote the center's Bike Borderlands and Ride with Gratitude initiatives, the Feel Good Heat campaign, and the Get Naked Vermont visitor and sustainable tourism outreach efforts and other programs. If you don't know that, check out our website. Previously, Kelsey crafted stories at the Harris Galveston District in the Greater Houston Partnership. Baker Ripley, the largest community development nonprofit in Texas, the Texas grocery chain H-E-B, and various nonprofits. A native Texan, she graduated from Baylor University with a bachelor's in public relations and a minor in political science. Welcome to Kelsey.
All right, so if y'all hear a y'all or howdy make it in, like I said, I'm a native Texan, so try not to give me too much grief about it. But I'm glad to be here today. Thank you for Julie and the team for asking me to speak. I feel like it's hard to follow such a great group of people already. Ethan Tapper did great. I'll reference some of his stuff, but really want to kind of harp on what's already been shared about storytelling and the need for telling the forest story and looking at different channels that we can do that with. So, like Julie said, I work for the Northern Forest Center. We're a regional nonprofit from Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, and New York, really working with rural communities and economies and the forest industry. I'm looking at taking our learnings from the Modern Wood Heat program and the Feel Good Heat marketing initiative that we did and kind of applying those and using those as a case study. Some of what we're going to look at is a little bit redundant, so I'm going to fly through to the things that y'all might have questions about. Seeing how do people perceive forest management, what do you think people want to know, and what are the barriers people face seeing that information. I think we've kind of talked through that extensively throughout this event so far. People perceive that maybe we don't need management, that management is bad for the environment and for the climate. However, I think we want people to know that, of course, active stewardship and management is a part of ensuring our forests are a climate solution. The barriers people may face to getting that information is that they're increasingly disconnected from working lands. That's complex issues. You all probably have very limited capacity, right? So there's doing your job and then also communicating and trying to find ways to make them one and the same and seamless. I think in addition to identifying opportunities, it's also identifying the channels. So looking at who do you want to reach? What do you want them to do? I feel like this is an important question to ask of like, what do you want people to do? Because that'll inform the types of content that you create. Because I think we talked about this morning about how, excuse me for the this is me at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Appreciate your patience. What makes stories relevant to people and looking at what you want them to do can make things more impactful. Looking at where the conversations are already happening. Susan saw on the local Facebook group about the local timber harvest, and so saw something in the paper. Going to where people are already having the conversations can be impactful and make things relevant. Who you want to reach drives the content that you tell and create. Can also help you measure whether you're making a difference. Who do you want to talk to? Do you want to talk to your entire county, a particular community that has an upcoming timber harvest, landowners in a particular area, your local and state reps? If you're talking to landowners, maybe you want to share a story about a landowner interaction you had. So again, pairing some of the content that people are asking for and that you feel like people need with your own experience. So I'm just curious, we're going to do a show of hands. How many of you use Facebook, both on a either professional or personal time? Yeah, anybody? All right, cool. How many people use Instagram? All how many people use X, formerly known as Twitter? And email newsletters or lists or anything like that. Okay, sweet. So before I jump to the next slide, this is kind of going to be a brief informal overview of some of the channels. Some of this will probably be pretty redundant to you, but I want to note that while social media can be a kind of an ambiguous mess at times, what makes stories compelling hasn't changed. Photos, firsthand experiences, what makes people excited to be in the forest, people will always be drawn to that. It's where those stories appear that can be different. So again, this is just like a kind of a overarching table, if you will. I do have copies of this. This is kind of what I've found to be true. This is not supposed to be extensive, if you will. I don't want to spend too much time here, actually, but I will kind of run down very quickly. Facebook is all-purpose. It's great for community engagement. You can link directly to the articles you find. You can post videos, multiple photos, create events for in-person tours that you might be doing. Instagram leads exclusively with visuals, photos, and videos. You can use hashtags. Does everybody know what a hashtag is? Okay, great. Sounds great. You can use stories and reels. And again, email newsletter is also a great way for communicating with people. I want to show a couple of examples that I find fun. This is Hemlock Holmes. She's a tree detective. One of the cool things that I really like is that she, one, uses hashtags. Two, she gives you kind of an insider perspective. She gives a very technical explanation of what's happening. She'll actually go and show you like why this tree is dying. But she introduces what the video is about. You see her face first, and then you go, you have it, she's walking up to the tree. She's walking up to the tree, and you can see her examining and pulling out her little microscope and showing what's happening. And it's like, it's a 50-second video. It goes quick, and it's pretty straightforward. This is her like showing exactly what you see. But the thing is, it's kind of low tech to a certain extent. I think this is a great example too from the Vermont Land Trust, where they're talking about invasive species. They give a little story in the caption, and then it gives a quote, and then it's like, hey, here's a resource for identifying invasive species. It's useful to the user. This is another one. This is a professor from Maine talking about like, what are the questions you have? Being a resource for people, I think, is really important in helping establish credibility. This one references the Society of American Foresters about like, here's how you find a forester. Again, trying to think outside the box, showing examples of the environment that you care for, put against resources that might be useful to people. I think I skipped a slide. I'm gonna just run through this really fast. Again, focus on what people see as a great way to highlight social media opportunities. You can reframe the narrative. I think Ethan kind of mentioned this. One of the things that I saw recently that I wish I'd grabbed a picture of is Ray at Forest Proud, the national organization. She had created a sign in front of a timber harvest that said, "Baby Tree Nursery, new trees to come soon." And you're like, man, that's something that's different. Not about the trees that were taken away, but the trees to come. Just like a fun, interesting way to, reframe what people are saying. I would recommend choose the best, keep it short. Video does best. I left my phone at the table, but if you're on Instagram and you're doing a reel, hold your phone vertically. You'll lose kind of some of the black space that you might get. If you're doing YouTube, flip it horizontal. It's just kind of the way that the different social media platforms work. I would encourage you to join the conversation by using hashtags. I feel like they are very effective on Twitter, or now X, but they're still useful on Instagram. These are some of the ones that we've seen and that we've used. You can use them throughout the post at the end. As Ethan mentioned, that collaborations and partnerships are extremely important. Hey, when you're doing an in-person event or when you're collaborating with partners, tag them on social media, and you will see your reach go much further. One thing I think is also very helpful, which I mentioned earlier, is in addition to posting on your own channels, post in local community groups. I think looking at who you are trying to reach is important. If you have a more concentrated effort to inform the people of the upcoming timber harvest in their area, finding the local groups that exist and basically reposting your content of what you've already created might be helpful so you're not reinventing the wheel. Speaking of not reinventing the wheel, I would recommend following like-minded organizations and people. Ethan has some great videos. I'm gonna show you some videos. Hit share on those and maybe add a comment or two, but you're done for the week or the day with the content you have to post. Again, really, you don't necessarily need to create a full-on video every time you post. You can still post, like I said, relevant information with people. These are the examples we ran through. So here's the case study that I wanted to show, the example that we had. You'll see, you might recognize Matt Langlis. He's a Vermont County Forester, from the Northeast Kingdom, where the Get Any Cade campaign is from, also known as Get Naked, which we did this from Woods to Warmth campaign when we realized that when we are trying to encourage people in our region to heat their homes with wood, we found that they have a common misunderstanding of how wood pellets affect the environment and forest management. So we saw the opportunity to show the impact of using wood pellets on the forest, the people, and the communities. So what we did was we took people into the forest, we put a face to the industry, and introduced them to wood pellet users who could explain their motivations for using wood heat. Again, the show, not tell that you've been hearing. There's 8 perspectives. We talked to a logger, a forester. People are always who are busy doing the work, but gave them the opportunity to talk to the people they are trying to reach and why that matters. I'm gonna skip through, the Feel Good Heat campaign. I think something interesting to note is we spent a lot of money. We created a lot of videos, but the thing that we noticed is that people responded best to videos with people in them. We did some animations, people found it useful, but people really responded to people. We noticed that we got millions of views. You're like, great. We had hundreds of people directly connected to wood pellet distributors and wood fuel distributors, and you're like, millions to 100, that doesn't really sound all that great. But I think it's important to note that we were going for public awareness and exposure, and not everyone was ready to buy a wood pellet boiler. But we did hear from partners that the leads that they were receiving were more qualified, that they knew the benefits, that they knew the impacts more so than they had been in the past. This is where I'm going to attempt to play a video, and we are going to see how this goes. I have to commend Lincoln for his beautiful seamless playing ability within his video. It may not show, and it might not give us sound, and that's okay. All right, we are going to move on then. It's going? It's going, but I don't hear any sound. It's all good. I'll narrate, yeah, exactly. No, I think it's important that Matt's video, as he goes through, I'll have a QR code if you really want to watch it later. It's less than a minute. You see a lot of Ethan's videos, less than a minute. I know it's really tempting to cram a bunch of information into one video. However, I think keeping it succinct and under 1 minute can really, that's basically what we're working with people's attention spans. However, that is why it's important to post regularly, and you can make things a series. You can do part 1, part 2. It doesn't have to be crammed all into one. And keeps people engaged, keeps people coming back for more. I think it's important to remember, just high level, whatever communications tools you decide to use, you can be an effective communicator. I think communicator equals storyteller. Storyteller, we all have these stories as we talked about this morning, but remember you are uniquely qualified. You spend your days among the trees and in nature. A lot of people crave what you have, or think they crave what you have, but I think we can remember that whatever tools you have, your perspective is invaluable. And I think it's important not to forget the value of small wins. Oh, I got 5 likes. I got 15 likes. Oh, snap, nobody cares. Nobody saw what I had. But I think it's important to go ahead and be a voice, to have a space where you can celebrate the work that you're doing. Because while you might have gotten 15 likes, someone down the road in a community that you're working in was like, man, now I understand what's happening. And that person can be the grassroots movement to convince more people. So I think it's important just to get in the process. You start small, try and stay consistent. Again, if you share resources from a state over, you're like, man, this doesn't exactly apply to what I'm doing. I think it's important not to nuance ourselves to death, that it's important to share the overarching positive story of active forest management and the impact that we can have. I believe that people are seeking to redefine or define their relationship with the land, what they can do with climate change, and I think you have an important part to play in showing them that they can be a part of the solution, that's that opportunity to celebrate. Again, we all care what happens to the forest. I would lean into that. I think I would leave you too with the idea that people want to see you in the environment that you care for. I think that's a great, everyone has a phone. Arguably, everyone can be amateur photographer. I think taking those photos and taking those videos, even better if you bring a friend with you and have them take a photo of you in that environment, helps establish your credibility, helps establish that you care, and helps bring your personal connection to where someone can connect with you. So that is all the time I have. I'm gonna...
Kelsey, why don't you go back and play the video without the sound, and we'll get started on questions. So we have about 5 minutes left. Yes, thank you to Kelsey. And we'll, you can sort of just watch Matt in the background there.
All right.
But any questions for Kelsey? Questions for Wendy? Questions for Lincoln? Wendy, do you have a question?
I think it might be helpful if Kelsey could just say how a hashtag works.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Everybody might not know that.
Oh, okay. So, does everybody know what the pound sign is? So, essentially, a hashtag is a link that how do I say this, connects you to a larger conversation. So if I use the hashtag #ForestProud, if I click on that, then I see all the other posts and all of the other conversations happening that have also used the hashtag #ForestProud. I think this is important when you say forestry or logging, that you start to tip into conversations that might not have the positive narrative of active forest management. Is that good? Okay, sounds good.
Again?
It's what platforms can you use hashtags on? So technically you can have them on Facebook. What I found is most effective is on Instagram. Like I said, if you are still active on Twitter, they're very helpful on Twitter. Those I would say, and on TikTok. TikTok I did not address, but it operates very similarly in some ways if you've used Instagram Reels. Chicken or the egg, you could argue which one came first, but also a helpful tool. I will say on Instagram and on TikTok, they are becoming more user-friendly. So you can take quick snippets, pans, quick like 5-second videos of a stand or of an interesting piece in the forest, and you're able to drag and drop those videos. So I will say that it is like way less technical than you think it is. I would start by playing around using photos of your dog and just trying to play around with the content you have.
Thanks. Okay. Chaley? The question is, what content is best for story maps?
Yeah, I mean, story maps are designed to integrate maps with multimedia. So anytime you have a story that has a spatial connection is what the program is designed for. But you can use it, you could use it for something like a flow chart. Absolutely. Play around with it. But anytime you're dealing with maps, space and time, data, and multimedia. Yeah, geo-referenced photos and things like that. That's really what the program's designed for.
Other questions?
a great question. Luckily, most social media channels provide you some sort of analytics. So I know, for example, with the Feel Good Heat campaign, we have, I would say, 50 to 60 is some of our most active users, surprisingly. Instagram is much younger, so it's like 25 to 40, I would say. So I think as you're posting, you can kind of get a sense for that. I would say that TikTok is our youngest users, then Instagram, then Facebook. I think Twitter is where you kind of got some overlap, but in terms of segmenting, I think that the younger the audience, the shorter you need to be. I think video does well for everyone, but especially on those channels that have a younger audience. I'm really interested from the Northern Forest Center perspective. We're looking more at forest stewardship messaging and what's resonating with different audiences. So we're looking at exploring public perceptions, and I'm especially interested with Gen Z. What terms, what messaging really resonates, and so that's something that we have not yet played with in terms of segmenting. So I know that was not quite what you were asking, but does that help? Okay.
I think we had a question in the way back. Go ahead. Could you stand? Thanks.
That's a great question. I cannot think of any off the top of my head, but yeah, Wendy might.
So I've just learned this because Fish and Game, New Hampshire Fish and Game does a good job with this, but if you want to shoot a video with your phone out in the woods, one, keep it upright if you're doing Instagram and sideways if you're doing YouTube, but get some Bluetooth earbuds and use your Bluetooth earbuds because the microphone will pick that up rather than just your phone, because your phone isn't going to hear you as well and it will be much clearer. That's my pro tip there. That's it.
Any other tools, tips? Okay. And question? We've got two questions in the corner.